Good morning. Today we are going to cover section 9.5, functions of angles. So take the time to copy your title and your essential question. How can we evaluate trigonometric functions without a calculator? Go ahead and paste your cutout and copy example number 1, and we'll start once you are ready. So notice that your cutout looks very similar to what we cover in section 9.2. The only difference is that before we were looking at a unit circle where your radius was 1. Now we have a triangle where your radius, or a unit circle where your radius is not going to be 1. Once again, we have a right triangle. So therefore, this is your x and this is your y, if that's the point xy. And your sine, just like we covered before, is your opposite over your hypotenuse, things that you cover in geometry. Your cosine is your adjacent over your hypotenuse, which is r, and your tangent is your opposite over your adjacent, or y over x. We know the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, and we don't want the denominator to be 0. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So let's go through example number 1. The terminal side of angle theta passes through the point -2, -4. Find the values of the 6 trig functions of angle theta. Now, one of the things that you want to make sure that you do is that you always want to make sure that you are sketching your angles. So let's go and make sure that you always make an x and y axis. Now, people that get it wrong on the test are students that decided not to draw your x and y axis. And most of the time it will be either you label it incorrectly or you get the sign wrong. So I'm now going to plot the point -2, -4. I'm going to go in my terminal side, passes through the point -2, -4. So therefore we can make the line longer. But in this case, we're going to end it here. And now we are going to make a right triangle by going towards our closest x-axis. And therefore, that's a right angle. And since this point is -2, -4, that means that this side is -2 and this is -4. Well, we have negative and negative. And now we are going to find our sine. I need to find all 6 trig functions. So I'm going to start with the sine of theta. The sine is your y over r. So this is our angle theta. So your y is -4 over the radius, which we need to find. So I'm going to use my Pythagorean theorem and find the radius. C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So therefore, c squared is equal to -2 squared plus b will be -4, or vice versa. C squared is equal to 4 plus 16. C squared is equal to 20. We'll go and take the square root on both sides. Your radius will always be positive. So even though we should end up with plus or minus, the square root of 20 is square root of 4 times square root of 5. So it'll be 2 square root of 5. And we don't need the plus or minus, our radius will always be positive. So therefore, this will be 2 square root of 5. So it'll be 2 square root of 5 I need to reduce my fraction, and I'm going to rationalize my denominator. So therefore, it'll be negative 2 square root of 5 over 5. The cosine of theta So find your cosine, tangent, and then we'll work on cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Go and pause it. So in this case, cosine is your adjacent, which is negative 2 over your hypotenuse, or your x over your r, however you want to think about it. My 2's cancel. I'm going to rationalize my denominator. So therefore, I end up with negative square root of 5 over 5. My tangent is my y over x, which will be negative 4 over negative 2, which is positive 2. Now I need to be able to find my cosecant, my secant, and my cotangent. So we know the sine and cosecant are reciprocals of each other. Now instead of taking the reciprocal of this fraction, I want to take the reciprocal of my original fraction. So it'll be 2 square root of 5 over 4. I'm going to reduce it once again, divide by 2, and it's negative 4, correct? So I end up with negative square root of 5 over 2. Once again, instead of taking the reciprocal of my final answer, I'm going to take the reciprocal of my original since I rationalized it. So I end up with 2 square root of 5 over negative 2, or negative square root of 5, since my 2's cancel. And the reciprocal of tangent, of cotangent, is tangent, so the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. So those are our 6 trig functions. Example number 2. Go ahead and take the time to copy it down, and we'll start once you are ready. Go and pause it if you need more time. So the 6 trig functions, find the 6 trig function values of the angle theta in standard position if the terminal side theta has an equation of x plus 2y equal to 0, where x is greater or equal to 0. So therefore, I need to be able to graph the following equation. We know that the terminal side has that equation 2, 4, 2. So therefore, we need to start by graphing the equation. So go ahead and take the time to graph it and see what you get. So in this case, to graph it, I need to be able to solve for y. Move the x to the right, becomes a negative x plus 0, divide by 2, so y equals negative 1/2 x. Notice that on this type of problems, you should always be, your y-intercept should be always at 0. I'm going to go down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2, and this is opposite, up in 2. And now I need to be able to decide whether I need to use this angle or this angle here. This tells you that x is greater or equal to 0. So therefore, we need to use this line here, so I erase my other part. If x was less than 0, then I'll be using the other angle. And now we need to be able to find a point. I can decide whether I want this point or this point or this point. Once I simplify, your trig function values should be exactly the same. So I'm going to use the smallest one so we don't have to reduce as much. We have 1 and 2. And now we made a mistake. What is it? This should be -1. So once again, I'm going to find my missing side so I can find my sign. C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. C squared is equal to 2 squared will be 4. Plus -1 squared is 1. C squared is equal to 5. So therefore C is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. Just like we talked about above, it's always going to be positive. And now I must find the sine of theta, my cosine of theta, and the tangent of theta. We're going to find each one, pause it, and see what you get. So to find the sine will be your opposite over adjacent, so -1 over opposite over hypotenuse, -1 over square root of 5, correct. I'm going to rationalize it, so it gives me negative square root of 5 over 5. The cosine will be my x over the r, or adjacent over hypotenuse. So it'll be 2 over square root of 5. Rationalize it, gives me 2 square root of 5 over 5. And the tangent is your y over x, well, opposite over adjacent, so -1 over 2. And now I'm going to find cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Instead of taking the reciprocal of this fraction, I want to take the reciprocal of this, so it'll be square root of 5 over -1, so negative square root of 5. Square root of 5 over 2. And -2. So notice that example 1 and 2 are basically the same, but they just worded slightly different. Example number 3. Find cosine if the tangent of theta is equal to 4 over 3. And theta is in your third quadrant. So once again, we want to make sure that we sketch the problem or the angle. And this is going to be the clue that you should be doing that. They tell you that it's on quadrant number 3. So therefore, if it's on quadrant number 3, we should be sketching our angle. And if you don't do so, you're going to make just small mistakes on your test, and most of it will be due to your sign. And then you're going to start losing some understanding of why. Let's do a quick sketch. So I know it's going to be on quadrant number 3. We know they're telling us that to find cosine, and they're telling us that tangent is 4 over 3. So first, I'm going to make my triangle on quadrant number 3. And it can be in any size. And my tangent is my y over x. So therefore is 4 over 3. That means that my y is my 4 and my x is my 3. But remember that if you go to the left, it will be negative. If you go down, it will be negative. And now I can find my missing side. I need to find cosine. Cosine of theta is my x over my radius, or adjacent over hypotenuse. So it'll be -3. I need to be able to find the missing side. So I'm going to use my Pythagorean theorem. C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. C squared is equal to negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 3 squared is 9. C squared is equal to 25. C is equal to 5. And yeah, some of you guys remember your 3, 4, 5 triangle from geometry. So therefore, that's it. Now remember that sketching your angle is essential. And the reason that this is positive is because a negative divided by negative gives you a positive. Example number 4. Go and write it down. See if you can work it out and see what you get. And then you can check your answer. Go and pause it. So now they ask you to find tangent. And they tell you the secant of an angle is square root of 5 over 2. And they tell you that the sine of the same angle is less than 0. So I know that secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So let me go and rewrite it as cosine of theta is equal to 2 over the square root of 5. And I'm not going to rationalize it. I'm going to leave it as that, since that is not my final answer. So I know that I need to graph it. The only problem that I'm having is that I don't know which quadrant is located. So we'll make a quick graph. So you need to decide which quadrant you're going to make your triangle. First, second, third, or fourth. Well, we know that the cosine is positive. So cosine of the angle. So I'm going to make very quick charts. And I know that the cosine is positive. So in which quadrant is cosine positive? Well, I know that cosine is my x value. And for my x value to be positive, then I know it's positive to the right, negative to the left. So therefore, my angle has to be on quadrant number 1 or quadrant number 4. Do you agree? And they tell me that the sine of the same angle is less than 0. So on which quadrant is your sine? So this one has to be positive, and this one has to be less than 0. Well, I know that my sine is my y value, right? So which quadrants will it be less than 0? That means that's going to be negative. So my sine is my y value. It has to be less than 0, so it has to be negative. My y value positive on top, negative on the bottom. So therefore, it has to be on the bottom quadrants. And they both have in common quadrant number 4. So therefore, I am going to draw my triangle, just any random triangle, in quadrant number 4. And now cosine is 2 adjacent. We're talking about this angle here, or your x, over your hypotenuse. I need to be able to find my tangent. My tangent on my angle is y over x. So now I just need to be able to find my y value. So go take the time to find your y value and see what you get. We have c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. Square of 5 squared. A is 2 squared, which is 4, plus b squared. That cancels, so it gives me 5 is equal to 4 plus b squared. So therefore, that gives me b squared is equal to 1. So therefore, b is equal to 1. And we have 1 over 2. But there's a mistake in there. What is my mistake? Correct. This one should be negative. And that is why it is essential that you graph it so you know which quadrant the angle is located. And whenever they give you one of the trig functions and they tell you that the other one is less than or greater than 0, you have to draw both of them so you can determine which one they have in common. Where on the previous problem, they tell you which quadrant is located, so it's just a little bit easier. So this concludes the lesson for 9.5. Email me if you have any questions. Have a great day.